New York, and on the new Hot 97 app. Ebro in the morning on Hot 97.
It's Ebro in the morning. Beautiful Laura Stiles, Rosenberg.
Yep.
And her name is Nicole Russell. She has a new book, Everything a Band-Aid Can't Fix. I follow her on Instagram. I forget why I started following you. I think you were working with Sway maybe, or...
Nope. No. For one. She was just pretty and you were creeping on her IG.
No, she does something with teenagers.
Okay.
I do.
And
it's
called the Precious Dreams Foundation. You gather kids around and you encourage them to open up and have discussions, and then you put out this book. How long has this book been out?
This book has been out for 1 week. So it's my new child. I'm so excited about it. It's an extension of the work that we do with Precious Dreams. Mm-hmm. And so the organization, we provide comfort tools for children in transition. So we work with kids in foster care and homeless shelters. But then we also do programming that teaches those kids how to self-soothe, because I think it's so far important that when these children are facing adversity or dealing with these obstacles on their own, that they have these positive options and they know the best things that they can do to deal with it.
Now go back to self-soothe, which is something I just learned about because I had a daughter 4 years ago, and self-soothing is something that, obviously is taught through, I don't know, some people call it the cry it out method. Other people it's called sleep training, when you're teaching kids how to actually sleep by themselves. And so this starts at a young age, right? With teaching kids how to use their own tools to solve their own problems.
Yeah, I think so. When I started working with this organization, it was very eye-opening for me, just because thinking about how foster kids sleep never crossed my mind. I never thought, what happens to the kid that has nightmares that doesn't have a parent in the next room and doesn't have anyone to cry to or talk to? How do they go back to bed? And then I saw that there were kids sleeping in these situations where they don't have pajamas, they don't have teddy bears, and so you're literally just crying yourself to sleep every night. So what happens with those thoughts that you're having? You're angry, you feel abandoned. And so we stepped in and we said, listen, here are some things to comfort you at a very young age. When you're older, here are some things that you can do. So we teach them like meditation, stretches for yoga. We have different guest speakers that come and share their stories. We do therapeutic writing because journaling is important. But just the process of learning how to self-soothe and self-comfort, it has to start early. And unfortunately, for many of these kids, it's not taught. It's just you realize one day that nobody is going to save you, and you either talk it out or act it out. So.
Now, is the Precious Dreams Foundation, is it all across the country, or is it just based in certain states?
Yeah, so we're a national organization, but we have local chapters in different states. So we're mainly here, Los Angeles, Baltimore, and South Florida.
Gotcha.
How does some of these, in doing this work, how is some of these behaviors in foster kids or even just young kids, how do they end up manifesting themselves, obviously, as adults if they go undiagnosed, untreated, undiscussed?
Yeah. So one example, the Parkland shooter, right? People labeled him as a broken child. He was a product of the foster care system. And he had been acting out for a while. No one did anything about it. He was online talking about wanting to be a professional shooter. Nobody did anything about it. So if you don't step in at some point, then these children become another statistic. A lot of the kids in foster care end up going to jail. A lot of the girls end up pregnant before age 24. So if you're not dead or on the street, like all these different things, it's somebody has to step in. Either it's one caring, supportive adult, or it's you, if that's all you have. And so that's what we're just trying to teach the kids, that if this is all you got to make the most of it.
And how can you do that? It's interesting because I interviewed Famous Dex last week. And we were talking about his life, and everyone knows about the things that he's done that are bad, that we know about.
The video of him beating his
getting his girlfriend
and
and all these really terrible things. But when he started telling me about what his life was, and he wasn't doing it in a way of making excuses, he was just kind of being biographical. I was like, man, we need to stop for a second sometimes and hear the level of trauma that people are experiencing.
Yes.
And we just expect that they're going to just come out of it okay. Not making excuses.
Right. Because I think that's the main thing, though, because a lot of people are quick to like shut it down and be like, that's just an excuse, right? When you hear, but then when you really think about it and you really hear these kids' stories, it should inspire you to be like, we need to step in and we need to do something about it.
Right.
To stop a next generation of, possible things like this.
Yeah. So one of my favorite things that we do with the program is bringing in guest speakers. And Ebro, you probably started following me because of like a mutual friend that's in the music business that I'm probably cool with. And so I have these different entertainers who are influencers come out and share their relatable stories, because a lot of times you don't even know what your favorite artist has really been through and what they've overcome. And I share a bit of those stories in the book. So even the first chapter opens up with A$AP Ferg and a lot of the death that he faced with from his grandmother to his father to his cousin to his friend, all these different people passing in his teen years. And so he started suffering from anxiety and depression. And even with the platform that he has, he never felt like he was comfortable enough to share that story with anyone until I said, listen, I'm writing this book and I want people to be very open and honest, because the stories and the things that you've been through can really affect a child. And so he said, well, listen, I've never really shared this, but here's my story, and it's crazy. He's written albums. He has like hit records. But he never felt comfortable enough to share those things.
And we see it time and time again. How many comedians, like, a lot of, that saying that you laugh to stop yourself from crying? A lot of people, I think, in entertainment have,
Well, in particular in hip hop, where growing up amongst violence is used as a street credibility.
It's a badge of honor.
It's actually a badge of honor.
Yeah.
So it's celebrated instead of being like, wait a second. How many people have you lost in your life?
Right.
Oh, this one. You're used to it.
And
you're
have you gotten
17?
help
And
for
did
it
you
yet?
ever try to get help?
Just yesterday, I interviewed this kid, Young and Ace, who's from Jacksonville, Florida. And 3 months ago, he was in a car with his brothers. The car gets shot up. He's the only survivor. He gets shot 8 times. He's on tour promoting his album right now.
Yeah, I hope he's also
He's like,
going
yo,
to
I don't go to
therapy.
sleep. I don't go to sleep. Right, I don't smoke, I don't drink, but I don't like to sleep because I still have visions of the moment. I'm like, yo, bro, you need to go seek some help. And I'm like, he was like, yo, I write my songs about it. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And when you're ready, because I didn't want to make him feel like, stop what you're doing. Because in
Right.
his mind, I need to go get this money because I'm trying to move my mom out of the neighborhood that I come from. I'm trying to right? So I didn't want to put the pressure on him like, yo, stop everything you're doing and go seek help, because he's trying to find a financial answer to his problems, right?
Yeah.
Because he doesn't feel, he's wearing the monitor, he's got the whole thing on. They wouldn't let him leave town to go get money, but he's trapped on a block where people want to kill him. He's writing songs about it. Record labels are now taking these young men around. It's been happening forever. Running around, everybody's making money on them, right? And if the songs don't hit and the money dries up, what are they left to, right?
Meanwhile, Ebro, you compare that to someone who's not from that world, right? Like someone who worked in an office with us, and you heard that they had one singular tragedy happen to them, where and not that dramatic. Someone in their life close to
His
them
3
died.
brothers.
So just take one person. You heard their brother died.
Yeah.
3 months later at work, you'd still be like, it's a very delicate time for them. They're dealing with the fact that they lost one family member. It's really
Right.
intense. We're all here to help. He was there as
Yes.
3 siblings were killed, and he's just back on it working.
Because
And
he's
this
not
happens all
dealing
the
with
time.
it. Yeah, he's not dealing with it. That's exactly why this book is called Everything a Band-Aid Can't Fix, because we so often cover up our issues and pretend like everything is okay, or put on a face, or use it to sell records, or whatever the case may be. But if we don't deal with it, it'll only take it longer to heal.
And so in this book, is this book for adults or is this book for kids who are dealing with...
Teens.
So I wrote this book for teens, and the response has been crazy since the release, because a lot of adults are saying they're reading it and
Because they haven't dealt with it
they
as a
haven't
teenager.
dealt with stuff
Yeah.
from their childhood. So they're going back and, starting to have those conversations with the people that have hurt them.
A Teen's Guide to Healing and Dealing with Life. Chapters like Self-Comfort 101, Perfect Family, anyone, right, who has a perfect family? What's normal anyway? How we're raised, don't hurt yourself, higher calling, higher education. Instant comfort tools. Do you yourself share any of your stories in here?
I do. I actually share a story in there about my family. And it's interesting because we went through a traumatic experience together and it was never spoken about. And so I wrote the book and I shared it with everyone. And my dad actually cut me off because he's still not ready to talk about it. He's still like in denial about the whole situation.
What's the experience?
So there was a domestic violence situation that I witnessed. And as a result, my parents ended up getting a divorce. And I talk about that night and that when I was 6 years old, that was the first time that I was forced to see myself when my mother was kicked out of the house. And I was like, all right, you're on your own. Mommy's not here for you to cry to anymore. Like, you've got to be okay. And so I write about that discovery because I think it's so important. A lot of people look at me and they're like, how have you mastered self-comfort? How have you figured this out? So I had to tell that. And when I shared it with my dad, he was just so livid. And it's been like 3 months and he's just like, I don't want no parts.
Now, in the book, though, speaking of your dad, you dedicate the book to your dad.
I do. That doesn't mean that I don't love my dad. You know what I mean? I understand that for him, this is still something he just doesn't want to face, and that's okay. But for me, I needed to deal with it and go through it and have those conversations so that I could heal.
And what was your dad's response? Like, what words did he choose to when he heard
he
about
read
it
it?
or read it?
So it's interesting. My dad actually said that I was lying. And I was like, okay, am I lying? So let me ask my mom and let me ask my brother. And let me check with the other witnesses that were a part of the situation. And everybody was like, yeah, no, you got the right story.
Yeah, no, parents love that. Parents love, like, when you be like, remember the time? And they'll be like, that didn't happen. You'd be like, it absolutely did.
Yeah. Time and time again,
Kids
that
have
happens.
a way better memory than parents.
Yeah.
I love that you left areas in the book for people to fill in their own personal journeys. Mm-hmm. What made you want to do that?
I did that because I want the kids that are reading this book to do the work. Also, because I'm someone who suffers from ADHD, so like I need a switch up. I need like pictures. I need quotes. I need story. You know, I need a little bit of everything.
Not reading straight
right,
through hundreds of pages.
Right. So I wanted to make it something that's interesting for kids, and when they go through each thing, it's not like someone just giving you the information. I'm telling you, here are the tools. Now apply it to yourself.
So would you encourage a parent who has a teenager to give this book to them, even if that parent maybe hasn't even noticed anything or isn't aware of anything?
Absolutely.
Or...
I think the best thing that we can do as humans is mentally prepare for trauma, for tragic experiences, for everything. I always say, like, if there was a fire, Ebro, would you run from it or would you stop and look around, see if there's anybody there before you go? What would you do?
Me, I'd probably look around. I'm a protector like that. I've been in a lot of traumatic situations where I've had to look for people first.
Yeah. What would you guys do?
I would definitely look for people first.
Oh, I'd be gone.
You'd run.
No, I don't know. I don't know.
So the thing is, if you never think about that scenario, when you're put in it and there's that fire, you know, most people are like, okay, I'm going to run. You know what I mean? You just don't know because you're not prepared. So when you have that thought, when it's happening, you're calm because you're like, no, I know what to do. I've already thought through this. I'm going to check and then I'm going to go. I can tell you a quick story. I used to have these nightmares about being kidnapped all of the time. And I started to, instead of waking myself up, they were very lucid dreams. I would go through the nightmare and I would get kidnapped. In every single dream, I would figure out how to break away. Because I would tell myself, if this ever happens, what am I going to do? And so one night, someone tried to attack me and he was running full speed behind me. I turned around. He was naked. It was like 4 a.m. It was crazy.
Brooklyn.
No, this is Long Island.
Long Island.
I turn around. He's running full speed at me. And I just stood there. And I waited for him to approach me. And I was like, let's go. And it sounds crazy whenever I tell people this story. They're like, what is wrong with you? But what happens when you run? That shows someone that you're in fear, right? And so I had faced that person in my dreams so many times that I was prepared for it. Mm-hmm.
So what happened?
The funny thing is I went crazy and I was like, he was trying to grab me. I was blocking him. I was screaming at him. I was telling him I was crazy and that I was going to kill him. And he got afraid and he was just like, be quiet, be quiet. You could tell that he was suffering from mental illness.
I mean, he was naked to start out.
Yes, yes. And it was wintertime. And so he like freaked out and just ran off. He was like, forget this. She's crazy and this is going to be too difficult. I'll find someone else. So he ran off and nothing, thankfully, ever happened to me. But if I was never prepared to be kidnapped or raped or molested or whatever, you know what I mean? That whole situation would have ended up different. I think it's so important to talk to our kids about every scenario because even if they're not, for instance, having suicidal thoughts, their best friend might be, and they're the ones that are giving that kid advice. You know, teens don't so easily go and share all of their thoughts with adults. Before they do that, they talk to their peers. So I think that this information is vital, not just for kids that are dealing with the issues, but who may know people that are.
Nicole Russell, the co-founder, executive director of Precious Dreams Foundation. It might have been through Ryan Grant because I'm really close with Nedick.
Yeah, so Ryan's on our board for Precious Dreams.
I just saw his name in the book, so that might have been how I discovered you.
Yeah.
Precious Dreams Foundation. What's your IG? Is it at Nicole Russell?
Yes. 2 S's, 2 L's.
There it is. Pick up the book, Everything a Band-Aid Can't Fix, A Teen's Guide to Healing and Dealing with Life. And in a time where we're having a lot of conversations around mental health and people, specifically Black and brown folks being more open and honest with trauma and trying to unpack what we've been through. Pick up this book for your teens or yourself. Nicole Russell, it was a pleasure. Nice meeting you.
Thank you so much, guys.